This world has been nothing but cruel to me, constantly reminding me of my sister, whom the doctor said might remain like that forever. But I won't give up. I refuse to accept this outcome. I won't die here, in a place like this. The system has shown me a way out, and I will fight for it, for her, and for the chance to change our fate. This is the story of The Invincible starts with a severed hand. A city lay in ruins, buildings crumbled and scattered like shattered dreams. Amid the chaos, a man knelt, trembling, his eyes wide with disbelief. He muttered to himself, his voice barely audible above the distant echoes of destruction. It was impossible. He had been chosen by the system. Towering above him loomed a monster, its form far larger than the wrecked structures around it. Its gaze locked onto the man, an unrelenting force of menace. Paralyzed by terror, the man could only question how this could be the end. The creature struck, its massive presence blotting out any hope of escape. The man's body remained frozen, helpless against the inevitable. Fear etched deep into his face, a flicker of regret surfaced in his final moments. The monster delivered its fatal blow, snuffing out his life amidst the chaos. Time passed, and a radio broadcast announced that 5 days had gone by since the beast horde attacked Sector C4. It reported that most communication with the outside world had been cut off since the second day. The broadcast continued with updates, mentioning that the Dawn Guild had deployed cultivators from other sectors to deal with the horde. A total of 75 people had been sent to end the threat in the area. Meanwhile, the Dawn Guild's cultivators, also known as players, were seen battling the monsters. Amid the chaos, Examiner Manglan glanced back at the trainees, observing their efforts. With a calm demeanor, she remarked that they were performing well. Here stood the main protagonist, Ch1, looking exhausted as he prepared himself for battle. Nearby, another trainee taking the test to join the Dawn Guild remarked with a smirk that Chu was struggling against a mere first-grade beast. The beast lunged forward, and Chu did his best to block the attack. He countered with his own strike, but it failed to land. The beast attacked again, and Chu tried to respond, but in his haste, he lost his footing and tripped, leaving himself vulnerable. The beast lunged forward, seizing the opportunity as Ch1 lay vulnerable. Chu's escape was impossible, but an idea flashed through his mind. As the beast's attack connected, it bit down hard on the arm holding his sword. The weapon pierced straight through its skull, embedding itself deep. The beast collapsed to the ground, lifeless. Chu stood over it, panting and worn out. Manglan observed the scene, her expression thoughtful. She acknowledged that Chu had shown incredible courage to attempt such a risky move but also recognized his weakness. Turning to the group, she gave a firm order for everyone to gather around. Manglan then asked the group about their first real battle experience. Wang Kong, a D-rank warrior, shrugged and said the beast horde was nothing to worry about. Li Zhuwei, a D-rank ranger, added that it was easier than he had expected. Manglan's expression hardened as she addressed them. She warned them not to become overconfident. The beasts they had fought were merely stray, low-grade creatures left behind after the main horde moved on a day ago. She emphasized that if they faced the real horde, they wouldn't last even a minute. Manglan turned to Chu and asked if he was alright. Chu did his best to stand tall, replying that he was fine. Before he could say more, Mu Zhao, a D-rank elementalist, stepped forward and grabbed his injured arm. She firmly stated that he was far from fine and warned that his wound needed immediate attention to avoid infection. Wang Kong, unimpressed, scoffed at Chu. He called him dead weight and mocked his ambition to join the Dawn Guild. Manglan quickly intervened, silencing Wang with a sharp tone. She addressed the group, explaining that they had explored most of the area and there was little risk of further danger. Manglan then instructed Chu and Mu Zhao to stay behind on standby, while the rest of the team continued searching the surroundings. A few minutes passed, and Chu thanked Mu Zhao for helping him, apologizing for holding her back. She tightened the bandages around his arm and, with a small smile, remarked that he must be fine if he was still able to scream like that. As she finished adjusting the bandages, she asked him why he wanted to join the Dawn Guild. Chu looked up, his voice tinged with uncertainty. He questioned her, wondering if he really seemed like a lost cause, especially since he didn't have a class like the others. Mu Zhao quickly shook her head, clarifying that she hadn't meant it like that. She thought about her words for a moment, realizing her response might have come off wrong. Chu took a deep breath and began to explain. recalling the moment he had visited the doctor. He remembered the doctor's somber words. The person in question was lucky to be alive. Chu had asked if there was no way to wake her up, but the doctor had shaken his head, explaining that due to current medical technology, it was difficult. The doctor then told Chu that he needed to accept that she might never wake up and could remain in that state forever. The doctor had walked away, but not without one final piece of advice. If a high-ranking healer from the Dawn Guild were willing to help, there was a slim chance she could recover. Chu had returned to see her lying in bed, lost in thought. His gaze fell on a picture of his sister, Xiaomei, and himself, a reminder of his past. He clenched his fists, a resolve forming in his heart. He would not give up on Chen. He would join the Dawn Guild, find the healer, and cure her, no matter what it took. Back in the present, Wang Lan observed the area, noting that it had become a wasteland. She reported no signs of survivors or beasts but admitted feeling that something was off. Wang Kong, unimpressed by the lack of activity, remarked with frustration that there weren't even bones left from the beasts. Wang Lan paused at his words, realizing he had a point. There should have been remains of the beasts they had defeated. Her mind raced as she pieced it together. Only a mid to high level beast could consume other creatures and humans without leaving a trace. The realization struck her like lightning. Panic set in as she understood the grave danger this posed. Without hesitation, she rushed toward Mu Zhao and Chu Mingxuan. She now understood that if such a beast were in the area, it would likely target Chu. His lack of a class and weakened state made him an easy victim. As she sprinted, her urgency grew, knowing time was running out for the two of them. Meanwhile, Mu Zhao smiled faintly and commented that Chu was amazing for pulling off such a daring move earlier. Her expression shifted as she looked down, admitting softly that she didn't have a strong desire to become a player or join any guild. She confessed that if a powerful beast ever appeared before her, she would likely be too scared to move. At that moment, the ground trembled slightly, and a massive worm-like beast loomed over her, its gaping maw ready to devour. Mu froze, terror gripping her as she slowly turned her head, her eyes widening in fear as the monstrous creature lunged toward her. Just as the beast lunged, Chu pushed Mu Zhao aside, the monster closing in on him instead. In those fleeting moments, he looked at her, a mixture of determination and resignation in his eyes. The creature consumed him and slithered away, leaving Mu frozen in shock. She gasped as she noticed Chu's arm lying nearby, severed in the act of saving her. The beast returned, looming over her with its monstrous presence. Fear coursed through her, but she forced herself to move, her mind racing. Chu had saved her life. There was a chance he was still alive, and she couldn't waste his sacrifice. Meanwhile, Chu found himself inside the worm's stomach, disoriented and overwhelmed by the suffocating darkness. His thoughts spiraled as he questioned if he was about to meet the same fate as the other players the monster had devoured. As his consciousness began to waver, an image of his sister appeared in his mind. He saw her lying in that hospital bed, helpless and unmoving. The thought of her sparked something within him. Who would take care of her if he gave up now? Strength surged through him as he clung to that image, refusing to let go. Refusing to let this be his end, Chu reached out desperately, his hand brushing against one of the weapons left behind by a dead player. His fingers closed around a sword, gripping it tightly as if it were his lifeline. At that moment, a glowing interface appeared before him. A mechanical voice echoed in his mind, announcing that the system transfer condition had been met. "You have gained the Supreme Ambition system," the voice stated. "Transfer process initiating." The system announced that the transfer had been completed and that the host status would be restored. Chu was confused for a moment as his strength returned, but he didn't dwell on it. His only thought was to pull the sword from the beast's stomach, preparing for what came next. Meanwhile, Mu Zhao was paralyzed by fear, unable to move, her body frozen as the monstrous worm towered over her. She shut her eyes, bracing for the inevitable attack. But then, the beast missed. When she opened her eyes, she saw the monster's massive form shifting, and a voice rang out through the air. It was Chu, stuck inside of the beast, having cut a hole in its body. He shouted, declaring that this wasn't the end for him. Mu's face lit up with relief and joy as she saw Chu alive. He caught sight of her and called out, asking for her help. Without wasting a moment, Mu Zhao unleashed her fireball skill, sending a burst of flames toward the beast. However, she quickly noticed that the attack did no significant damage. Chu, still standing strong, shouted at her not to stop. The beast, though injured, roared in fury. His system interface flashed before his eyes, showing the beast had 2,743 HP remaining. "It's almost dead," Chu screamed, determination in his voice. Meanwhile, a shadow watched from the sidelines. It was the rest of the group, including Mang Lan and Wang Kong. Mang Lan observed the battle with a smirk, commenting that she hadn't expected the two newcomers to survive, let alone injure a beast of that level. She dismissed it as luck but also acknowledged the value of the materials from a 5th-grade magical beast. It was worth a fortune, easy money. Wang Kong, unsure of what to do, looked toward Mang Lan. She casually replied, saying they were going to watch from the sidelines, letting the two handle it. Meanwhile, Chu's system showed that the beast's HP was now under 10%, and it was entering a berserker state. The creature smashed its body in anger, sending Mu flying off the ground. Chu screamed, frantic, as he asked if Mu was alright. Though clearly worn out, she managed to stand and reassured him that she was okay. But Chu knew time was running out, his own life was slipping away. He shouted at Mu to use her most powerful skill and attack the beast. Confused, she hesitated, but Chu screamed at her to trust him and just do it. Understanding the urgency, she nodded and began channeling her spell. Chu, barely able to stand, yelled at her to attack now. A massive fire arrow flew toward the beast, and Chu, with every last ounce of strength, jumped out of the hole he had been trapped in. He positioned himself just as the arrow shot toward the beast's weak point. The fire arrow struck, and the beast roared in agony before collapsing to the ground, lifeless. Moments later, the battle was over. Chu slowly started to lose consciousness from the blood loss, his system announcing that he had defeated the 5th-grade giant worm and gained experience. More information flashed across the screen, but he couldn't focus on it. His vision blurred, and he fainted. Time passed, and the scene shifted to the Dawn Guild. Captain Han Zuge, a B-rank spirit speaker, was laughing heartily as he congratulated two new players on passing the assessment, welcoming them as official members of the guild. Wang Kong, one of the new members, thanked the captain with a respectful bow. Han then turned to Mang Lan, praising her for her excellent leadership skills in guiding the newbies to take down a 5th-grade beast. He recognized that this was an incredible feat, and the guild would arrange a reward for her. Mang Lan thanked him, but Han's attention shifted as he glanced down at a report in his hand. His expression darkened when he noticed that the other two trainees, Chu and Ruzhou, had failed to pass the assessment. Time passed, and we find Chu slowly waking up in a hospital room. He sat up, rubbing his head, still trying to process that he had somehow survived. His thoughts quickly returned to the battle, remembering the moment he lost his right arm. Just then, a voice interrupted his thoughts, and Wang Kong called out, telling him he wasn't dead yet. Chu, still disoriented, asked why Wang and Li Zhuwei were there, but Wang ignored his question and simply remarked that Chu was a tough kid. Chu then asked about Mu Zhou, his voice filled with concern, wanting to know if she was okay. Wang sneered, calling her useless trash who barely survived. He went on to say that she was nothing more than a decoy, unable to make it into the Dawn Guild. He proudly showed off his badge to emphasize the point. Chu was confused by Wang's words, unsure how things had played out. Li Zhuwei, seeing Chu's distress, spoke up, trying to calm him. He explained that Chu shouldn't be upset because it was Mang Lan who had ultimately finished off the 5th-grade beast, saving Chu's life in the process. Li added that Chu would have died if Meng hadn't stepped in and reminded him that he was lucky to only lose an arm. Chu stared at Wang, shaking his head in disbelief. He wanted to argue that it was he and Mu who had taken down the beast, but Wang quickly cut him off, arrogantly stating that if he said Meng and their team were the ones who defeated the beast, then they were. Wang leaned against the end of Chu's hospital bed, his tone darkening as he threatened him. He reminded Chu that he had been saved by them and that Meng had been the one to finish off the beast. Without their help, Chu would have been dead, and he was lucky to be alive. As Wang left the room, he gave Chu a final warning. Chu should understand now and keep his mouth shut, or it wouldn't end well for him. He called Chu trash and told him to stop dreaming of becoming a player, suggesting he should go back to picking up trash instead. Chu seethed with anger, the injustice of it all burning within him. He thought back to the effort Mu and he had put in just to survive, only for Meng, Wang, and Li to steal their achievement. But just as the frustration overwhelmed him, a system notification appeared before him, offering something unexpected. A newbie mission was ready, and it asked if he wanted to give it a try. Chu's eyes widened as he recognized the system that had appeared during his battle with the beast. A notification appeared in front of him, detailing a new mission, the Craftsman God mission. It explained that in the ancient machine city, the craftsman god had left behind many mechanical creations, but his greatest masterpiece, the right arm, was hidden. The system asked if Chu would take on the mission. Chu's thoughts immediately drifted to his own lost right arm. He remembered the pain and the helplessness he felt after the battle. Then, he thought about how the system had aided him in his time of need. Without hesitation, a surge of determination flooded through him, and he screamed out that he would take the mission. In an instant, a glowing blue ring surrounded him, its light growing brighter by the second. Moments later, the bright light vanished, and Chu was gone, no longer in the hospital bed. Chu landed on the ground with a soft thud and immediately questioned where he was. He looked around, taking in his surroundings, and quickly realized he was inside some sort of dungeon. Before he could process it further, the system chimed in, announcing that part 1 of the mission had started. It explained that he needed to reach the deepest part of the city alive. As Chu went to stand up, his right foot landed on something. Suddenly, spikes shot up from the ground in front of him, narrowly missing his foot. Startled, he moved back, but as he did, more spikes began to emerge from the floor. With each movement, more spikes followed, forcing him to step backward to avoid being impaled. Just when Chu thought it was over, he accidentally placed his hand on another trap. The side walls opened, and numerous spikes shot out across the area. Chu managed to dodge them somehow, his heart racing as he questioned what was going on. He paused for a moment, reflecting on how his body felt lighter, almost as if he was moving faster than before. But as he landed back on the ground, another trap activated. A loud, ominous sound echoed in front of him, and when he looked up, he cursed. A massive boulder was rolling toward him, threatening to crush everything in its path. Without a second thought, Chu turned and sprinted, knowing that his only chance for survival was to outrun the enormous rock barreling down on him. Meanwhile, ahead in another room, a voice echoed from behind a small door. Suddenly, Chu appeared, jumping through the open door just as the boulder smashed into it. He looked back, a rush of relief flooding him as he realized he had narrowly escaped death. But before he could catch his breath, the system updated, announcing that Chu had reached part 2 of the mission. In the center of the room, there were many boxes. One by one, the boxes opened, and mechanical soldiers began to march out. The system's voice explained that these were basic creations of the craftsman god, but due to the passage of time, they had grown to the strength of first-grade beast monsters. Chu's heart raced as more and more soldiers emerged from the boxes. He started to panic, overwhelmed by the sheer number of them. But as he glanced back, he realized his escape route had been cut off. The boulder had sealed the way out. But he had no time to waste as one of the soldiers attacked. Chu questioned if this was the end for him, glancing back at the incoming strike. Despite the fear coursing through him, he refused to give up and dodged the attack. As he soared through the air, he clenched his fists and declared that he would never give up until his sister was cured. He vowed to destroy them all and survive. With a surge of determination, he crushed the soldier that had attacked him, stomping it into the ground. However, confusion overtook him as he realized that the soldier had lost to him after just one move. He wondered when he had gotten so strong. Just then, the system chimed in, informing him that he had defeated a soldier and gained experience. The system displayed that Chu had leveled up to 7 and now had the class of a martial artist. Unsure of what to make of the system's message, Chu grabbed a weapon, realizing that fighting seemed to make him stronger. As more soldiers advanced toward him, he screamed that this was exactly what he needed to get stronger. With determination, he dashed toward them, taking down one soldier with a single blow, then another. Though he got injured in the process, he didn't give up. He attacked relentlessly, each strike more forceful than the last. The system's voice echoed, announcing that he had defeated many soldiers. A few minutes later, Chu took down the last one, breathing heavily. As he looked back and caught his breath, he muttered, "I think I got all of them just now." Chu noticed his experience bar at 95% and muttered that if there were a few more enemies, he could level up. But just then, the floor began to shake, and the system notified him that the mission was updating. A massive box appeared in the center of the smaller ones, and the system explained that this was the final part of the mission. He had to defeat the mechanical knight guarding the craftsman god's masterpiece. Suddenly, a surge of energy hit the massive box. Chu watched in confusion as a foot stepped forward. The system clarified that this was the knight and his horse, guardians of this area. However, due to age, the knight had dropped in strength to that of a third-grade beast. Chu found himself regretting his earlier wish for more monsters to fight, now faced with the intimidating knight. Just then, Chu saw the knight's sword swing right in front of him. The knight's attack slammed into the ground, shattering the floor into pieces. Chu quickly dodged, narrowly avoiding the devastating blow. He noted that the knight was incredibly fast, far quicker than he expected. The knight then turned its gaze, locking eyes with Chu. A cold shiver ran down his spine as he realized this was bad. The battle had just escalated to a whole new level, and he was now the knight's target. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and like. It really helps me out.